Hello YouTube, and welcome to my show, Sexism in Movies and TV. For 5 years I've been doing this show, and usually in a new seasonal intro, I give the reasons as to why I do it. Well, I've come up with some new reasons, in addition to the ones that I would give out in the last intro. I do this show to point out all of the horrible misandry, which means hatred of men and boys, that happens on mostly American TV and in American movies. But the really sad part of this whole thing is the fact that we're so desensitized to it that a lot of people can predict when it's coming. And what's even worse is that there are some people who actually find it funny. Okay, a new reason I thought of as to why this show must continue is because the toxic portrayal of men and boys that comes from American film and television is actually the one very big factor as to why men and boys basically have such low self-esteem. And the other half of the reason as to why stuff like this gives young men such low self-esteem is because we live in a world where stuff like this is constantly everywhere, all over the TV screens, all over the internet, all over social media. And if a young man or boy is not in a relationship, assuming he's 13 or older, his peers will instantly start picking on him and calling him gay. Then throw in the fact that there are absolutely no positive male role models on TV or in movies for the most part, and when some actually do appear, these insane feminists will instantly label it toxic masculinity and do whatever they can to make sure that it's ripped off the air and essentially replaced by their own pro-feminist, anti-man, anti-boy propaganda. Another reason why I do this show is to point out the fact that the corporations who make these movies and shows, they want to gain social brownie points, which is why in most Western franchises there are no positive male role models. They seek to gain social brownie points by essentially trading old stereotypes for new ones. They think they're being progressive when they're not. They just exchanged good archetypes for bad archetypes. And they do this to be progressive and get social brownie points. And it usually ends like this. And the third and final reason as to why I do this show is because the portrayal of men and boys, not just in movies and TV, but in all media, has become horrific. To the point where it's downright dehumanizing. And I could see some kid's little sister treating him like bullshit because the characters she watches on TV treat the men and boys around them like bullshit. And it could either lead to this boy becoming abusive towards his sister, or developing really low self-esteem. So anyways, in closing, this show exists to point out the horrible misandry that has infected movies and TV. Now, with that said, on with the review. Okay, in this episode of Sexism in Movies and TV, I'm gonna be reviewing the Simpsons episode, Finding Mr. Good Bart. And when I first saw this, when it aired, I liked half of it. I liked the Pokemon Go parody. That was the only redeeming thing about this piece of crap. But you're probably wondering, how is this sexist? Well, I'm just gonna give you a quick recap of this episode, and then I'm going to explain how this is sexist. The episode starts off with Bart Simpson attending a fancy party with a bunch of old ladies where they pinch his cheek and treat him like he's their grandson. It starts with Grandparents' Day at Springfield Elementary. The kids are singing a song for the grandparents. Bart goes off script, so Principal Skinner drags him into his office. Principal Skinner tries to go for an ironic punishment by making it so Bart has to babysit his mother. But Bart actually accepts. Principal Skinner didn't think that would happen. So Agnes gets into a bit of a conflict with one of the actual grandmothers, who actually taunts her because Principal Skinner is incapable of starting a family and giving her grandchildren. So Bart steps in and pretends to be her grandson, and actually enjoys spending time with her. She wants to spend more time with Bart, and after a fantasy sequence about how this would actually punish Skinner more than him, based on the fact that he's a 40-something-year-old baby, Bart agrees. She takes Bart to this fancy restaurant in a social group she's part of, and when Bart started getting stuff for free, he came up with the genius idea of being a grandson for hire. I guess the montage of him switching outfits and receiving free stuff is supposed to be funny because they become, well, really absurd. I mean, it would be physically impossible for this kid to have this many grandmothers. At a salon, Bart runs into this one old lady who just needs him to get out of the retirement home. She was this big-time nature photographer, and she can't be left alone in the wild anymore and wants to relive her glory days. Since Bart knew that 3 of the local bullies would be in the woods that day, he actually does show up to make sure nothing bad happens to her. And surprisingly enough, when he returns her to the retirement home, he actually feels bad about accepting the money and gives it back. She gives him her camera. Principal Skinner is left home alone. And when Bart finds out that she might have gone to the forest to end her own life, the A and B plots converge, as he tells all of the Pokemon Go fans that this old lady is a Pokemon who's worth 1,000,000 points. They all look, parody the Pokemon theme song, and we get a fake out where we think she's dead, but actually she's alive, and they walk off into the sunset. Now, you're probably wondering, how in the world is this sexist? Well, it all boils down to one word: hypocrisy. And if you're wondering where the hypocrisy comes in, the opening scene actually has the song "I'm a Gigolo" playing in the background, implying that this is metaphorical and Bart is a metaphorical prostitute. In the end of the episode, Bart says that he learned that it's wrong to toy with people's emotions. And that's kind of where the hypocrisy actually comes into play. The episode Bart's Girlfriend did this exact same thing, but by no means did Jessica Lovejoy, the little brat who was toying with Bart's emotions, get any comeuppance for her actions. Bart actually calls what he's doing a scam, but since he was able to get business cards made, we get the implication that what he's doing technically is legal. You know, because someone was actually willing to print business cards for this kid, and I'm sure he had to tell them what he was doing so they'd know what to write, and if it really was a con, then they would have kicked his ass out. Well, on the other end of the spectrum, the episode Bart's Girlfriend ends with Jessica Lovejoy getting off scot-free even though she framed Bart for theft of actual money, turned him into a pariah, basically denied doing anything wrong, and basically pulled the fire alarm just for fun. I mean, this is the kind of bitch who deserves a high-level punishment. Something that you'd expect the writers on SpongeBob to do to Squidward, or something that you'd expect the writers on Family Guy to do to Meg. This bitch didn't learn a thing. Well, technically, she actually did. I'm wrong. She learned that she can use her beauty to manipulate boys into doing whatever she wants. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, Bart learned that it was wrong to take advantage of people's emotions. These two episodes that I've just compared are by no means equal. This is sexist, and this isn't. And something that actually has come up with stuff like this is that movies, TV, video games are allowed to do whatever they want or get away with whatever they feel like putting in the story, as long as that story has the right politics. That's completely fucked up. It truly shows how shallow identity politics have become, and the fact that all these companies need to do is either give a franchise a feminist twist or a protagonist who's a member of any group who's not white and straight. Basically any group that those idiots on Twitter feel has been oppressed by straight white men, and they will defend it to the death, even if the person from that group is a horrible character. What Jessica Lovejoy did was wrong, but she got no punishment. However, what Bart did was technically legal, and he has to learn this moral lesson. And this misandric piece of bullshit actually came out before Simpsons Season 9. Before every jackass on the internet said that The Simpsons went downhill in 1998. It did not. If anything, it got better when that man-hating idiot Matt Groening left the show. I could have used the episode I Love Lisa as my example, but Bart's girlfriend was way worse, even though both episodes have a few key events in common. 1. A girl manipulates a boy and toys with his emotions. 2. She receives things from him in either a legal way or an illegal way. And 3. At the end, she hasn't learned jack or shit. Oh, and 4. The boy she manipulates is someone that she absolutely has no interest in, romantically or otherwise. And this was when the creator of the show, Matt Groening, was still on. And I'm just gonna say it, The Simpsons it wasn't something new when it came out. It was Married with Children, the animated series. Or better put, it was Married with Children, fused with Matt Groening's jackass political opinions. And with that, I'm done. All 3 episodes I mentioned here are complete bullshit. And I'm ending the review by saying that out of all 3, Finding Mr. Good Bart is the only one that should have been made, if only for the side story that was a funny Pokemon Go parody.